ANC NEC is expected to make the outcomes of its weekend meeting public tomorrow. The economy and ailing municipalities were high on the agenda. For analysis of what might be announced, we're joined by political analyst Professor Cebisi Tletyana. Thank you very much for coming in. Good morning to you. So this was said by the President. He said if the ANC alliance is dysfunctional, we can't transform the economy. That kind of says it all, doesn't it?
Well, it does, but the question really is whether they can change the economy because of that alliance or in light of that alliance, because some of them are quite opposed to some of the changes that are being proposed to turn the economy around.
Like regardless of whether these suggestions are good or bad, it's the principle.
The alliance, in fact, might be the hindrance towards changing the economy, the SACP COSATU. For instance, in relation to ESCOM, you might have to privatize that entity because, as it currently stands, it's not fully functional. Some economists actually have complained that the national wage is also a little bit of a complication because there are instances where you cannot afford to pay that minimum wage, especially because it applies to small business. So small business should be exonerated from some of these regulations so that they're able to recruit even more people.
And it also makes us uncompetitive in many areas.
It does. So the question then is, will this president risk breaking the alliance? Because it's a bit tricky for him because the alliance partners, COSATU and the SACP, are his ardent supporters, right? So if he goes ahead with privatization, withdrawing minimum wage in the small business sector, they might not be happy with that. Can you risk that? Because the ANC really has to take certain drastic changes, even risk alienating supporters within for the economy to work. So they have to prioritize national economy beyond the ANC for this economy to really rev up.
But maybe that's the solution. I mean, you know, if he breaks with the alliance, if he breaks with the Ace Magashule camp, if he sorts out those problems, I mean, it's going to bring him down anyway. So why doesn't he take the brute force alternative?
He has to, but the problem with the ANC is always explaining why they can't do certain things. They are comfortable maintaining the structure that they have now instead of taking risks. Cyril Ramaphosa started well as a public leader. Previous ANC presidents have been organizational leaders, prioritizing the health of the organization ahead of the public. He started off nicely as a public leader, so he needs to carry that through. And in fact, the prospects of his re-election and the general popularity of his presidency depends on him going beyond the ANC.
Yes.
The ANC is pretty much an albatross, and it is currently configured. Part of the reason, for instance...
Does he get that? He must get that, though.
Well, maybe he does. You see, I mean, how else would you explain people who are obviously compromised going to parliament, being elected by nominated by ANC branches to go to parliament? That still tells you of an ANC that is not entirely behind the New Dawn theme.
Or behind resurrecting the country. I mean, here we have, potential economic movement, which has been hampered by, the same old story, the same old players. So I'm just wondering what this new body of people is going to do to push the economy forward.
Never mind the economy, or put the economy aside. Look at the municipalities, which are closest to communities. That's where implementation happens. Every year we get reports from the AG's office telling us how much money has been wasted, and it increases with every year.
Yes.
They've been talking of instituting lifestyle audits. You go to any municipality, you'll find individuals who live comfortable, ostentatious lives when in fact they don't have jobs. There are people we know don't have jobs but drive fancy cars and dress up fancy. And
what, sorry, excuse me jumping in here, what was said from the NEC is that we have to really focus on these municipalities, crack the whip on service delivery. Goodness, we could have said that.
That's a lingering problem. And the challenge, though, is that if you crack against municipalities, you are really setting yourself up against ANC branches and REC's, regional executive committees. Because municipal budgets in the last few years have been coffers for regional ANC leaders. That is why about 90% of our municipalities are not functional. Only 10%, even less, than 10% is fully functional. The reason is because you have incompetent ANC people appointed. At some point, we had a law that said ANC officials cannot be appointed into municipalities. But they've disregarded that law. You have a lot of people who are ANC officials who are also municipal officials. So there's a lack of oversight, because ANC branches are meant to exercise oversight over municipalities. They're meant to represent the community, but
let's get the politics out of municipalities.
They've been enmeshed into the state. So part of the reason why municipalities are not functioning is because ANC dysfunctionality has filtered into the municipalities. So if you want to change municipalities, you have to confront ANC problems. And with this president that has a delicate support within the ANC, he might not be able to risk that. But the bottom line, as we were saying earlier, to turn the ANC around, you must be willing to face the risk of losing it. But put your trust onto the public. And this president started well, as I said earlier, as a public leader. If he continues on that path, I think he might be able to succeed, but then he has to have the courage to do that.
Kobisi, thank you very much for coming in. Good to talk to you.
You're welcome.
Well, China's marked the 7th